Welcome on into the SEC, where one weekend you get disastrously blown out by South Carolina. The next weekend, you're going down to the wire against the number one team in the country. And 2 weeks later, you take Lane Kiffin down on a homecoming for what is supposed to be his 100th win. But that's just the way the storybook folds in this whole SEC as Kentucky finds a way to upset number 6 Ole Miss on the Grove. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson. Breaking down the madness that occurred in Oxford on Saturday morning for what is supposed to be the appetizer to the granddaddy of all days in the conference. But real quickly, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below because this is your number one source for all things SEC moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Make sure that you follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10 Sports. Scream at me at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to check out all of our great work found, make sure that you visit SECUnfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by our friends over at Roback. Look good and feel good this upcoming fall on game days with Roback.com. Promo code SECU for $20% off your first purchase. Fall foliage is around the corner. You know you're going to want to take those nice, pretty pictures. Do so with the Roback fall collection. 20% off your very first purchase. Dave, what the hell did we just watch? I mean, honestly, because it's one thing to see this team, this Ole Miss team, be potentially overhyped. It's another thing to see this team somehow let a program like Kentucky hold their own. And then it's another thing to say, how good is South Carolina? And is Mark Stoops just allergic to Beamer ball? Because at this point, the team that we saw 3 weeks ago lose in emphatic fashion at Kroger Field just boat raced at Ole Miss, a program that spent money, that spent resources, that went out into the transfer portal to have the number one class. They outclassed them, they outworked them, and ultimately they got the win on the road. What do we make of this at this point?
I think you got to give Brad White and defensive coordinator, you got to give the defensive coordinator credit. That was their best defensive game the entire year. Thought they played good against Georgia. I really didn't think they were that bad against South Carolina outside of two or three busted coverages, which that happens at times. That was a game, it was just a total snowball, worst game. Probably couldn't play that as bad as they played against South Carolina again. But Kentucky, the game plan, me and Chris previewed this game on Monday, whenever we previewed it. And the game plan they went about was exactly what I was like. If they want to have a chance in the fourth quarter, they have to stay ahead of the chains. They rarely ever got behind the chains. They really did. They always stayed in 3rd to 5, 3rd to 7. In today's college football, that's manageable. They stayed in 3rd and manageable because they were decent on 1st and 2nd down. Brock Vandegrift, again, not going to go set the world on fire, but the guy made some, it's the best way, edgy, X-Factor, Moxie-type plays, had a good kind of feel of the run game today on when to toss, when to keep. He made the necessary plays when he had to make them. I thought overall just a phenomenal game plan. Hey, we're not going to go try to match these guys score for score. They didn't panic after Ole Miss went out and scored with ease. Like Kentucky wouldn't have had what they have called like a 7-minute drive that they only got a field goal on. But I tweeted about it in the first half. I was like, that is their best offensive series.
That was their best offensive series of the entire season.
And probably should have got a PI call. They probably should have got a PI call, but it would have extended the drive. But nonetheless, phenomenal game plan for Kentucky. Again, they were never going to go just beat the crap at Ole Miss. They had them where they wanted them the whole game. Kentucky's defense, I mean, what they hold at Kentucky? Kentucky's defense, 1 for 10 they held Ole Miss on 3rd down. Total yards, again, a little bit overrated stat, 353, not bad in today's time. I mean, you look at Jackson Dart's numbers, 18 for 27, 261, 1 touchdown. Not terrible, and he wasn't terrible, but they made him uneasy throughout the day. Held Ole Miss to 92 yards, forced 1 turnover. It was about as Kentucky style in the Mark Stoops era that you could ask for type of win. I mean, it was a very impressive win across the board for Kentucky. Again, I think every week we're just sitting here talking about, oh yeah, you're assuming it, as well, just as well as I do, Cole. You know what assuming does. And I think we're always left with question marks after every week. Like, thought I had them figured out, and I'm going back to the drawing board.
Go ahead and hit your comments up in the comments section. We'll get to them in a moment. Let's start off with Kentucky. We always pick the winners. Real quickly, though, I don't know what you thought that was after the opening drive. If you were to tell me that opening drive by Ole Miss was the setting tone of this game, I would have imagined that it was a 45-10 blowout. I would have imagined that you were going to see Trey Harris find his way for another 175-yard performance. I thought you were going to see Juice Wallace have another 150-yard gain. The rushing attack would be potent. If that opening drive, and then I turned off the television to see the end of the score, I would have said who got hurt, how many players left the game because of ejections, how many targeting calls were there, because that was it. That was the only drive that it ever seemed like Ole Miss was comfortable. But let's talk about Brock Vandagriff. Let's talk about what Kentucky did. Their drive, their first drive, to be able to milk that clock, their ability to win on third down, their consistency of setting up second and manageable, their ability to be able to utilize Demisumo Karangbe, who, by the way, was supposed to have help in this game. Chip Trayanum was going to play, and then at the very last minute, they said, hey, his hand still is not at full capacity. He can't really take off handoffs. Let's go ahead and just trust number 0, bullying his way through the defensive line, bullying his way to the second level. Kentucky didn't go with a lot of flash or finesse. What they did was they played their brand of football. They played their style of consistency. They made Ole Miss have to go ahead and deliver the punch. And because they were getting so many uppercuts in the first half, they never were able to feel comfortable going into the second half. In my opinion, whether or not I think that Bush Hamden and Brock Vandagriff are a good fit, whether or not I believe that this is going to be a monumental year down in Lexington, what you saw in this performance was Kentucky-style football that made Mark Stoops one of the more likable, one of the more underrated coaches, and one of the more better game planners when it came to this matchup. And remember, a few years ago, these two teams went down to the wire, and it was Jared Ivey forcing a fumble late in the fourth quarter to secure a win. They don't get that opportunity in this matchup. And also, just constantly, the ability to get that second adjustment was a major stepping stone in favor of the Wildcats. The ability to get that extra play, the ability to have a wide receiver breakout, penalties galore from Ole Miss, the second chance opportunities kept Kentucky rolling, and ultimately it's what got them into the end zone at the last minute to be able to secure a win.
Yeah, how about Stoops getting a lot of hell from myself, and I believe you were on it as well against Georgia 2 weeks ago for punting late. How about him going for it, 4th and 7?
The biggest ball drop I have ever seen in his career. And you know what?
60-yard, just flipped the momentum of the game immediately. I'll give Mark Stoops credit. He does get a lot of credit, especially South Carolina game, inexcusable. But the way they bounced back the last 3 weeks has been really impressive. I know they lost to Georgia. I know they didn't have a passing touchdown against Ohio, but they still won the game convincingly. And then this one speaks for itself. Maybe a top 5 Kentucky football win of all time. Like on the
it's
road,
up there.
When you factor in the context of the situation. I mean, give him credit, man, for bouncing back this. I mean, I left him for dead after I'll be honest with you, I left him for dead. I'm pulling up Kentucky's schedule now.
I left him for dead
after the South Carolina game. I was like, dude, they're not going to. And even the Ole Miss, I was like, they're still not going to be great on offense. And the numbers don't show that it's like, wow, Kentucky's totally flipped the switch offensively. But the way they just kind of controlled the line of scrimmage, got in manageable situations, were just there in the fourth quarter to have a chance. That's all you could hope for. And as you know, Cole, you get in the fourth quarter, one-possession games, all it takes is just somebody winning their one-on-one matchup down the field on a 4th and 7, and it just flips the whole game. I mean, I give Stoops credit for having his team not totally check out after that South Carolina game and a tough loss to Georgia. It completely tipped the cap to Mark Stoops and that staff.
I think on top of that, it was just the way that they played their brand of football, and they never tried to be sugarcoating it or go with the flash. They just said, let's be physical. Let's do what we do best. They won in every single marquee category leading up to that final drive. Think about this for a minute. The play calling of Lane Kiffin with Charlie Wise has led to Ole Miss being the number 1 passing team, the number 1 scoring offense, the number 1 total offense, the best offense on third down conversions. Before that final drive, Brock Vandagriff, who we have written off for days as being an anemic passer, had more passing yards than Jackson Dart, a Heisman Trophy favorite.
Yeah, nobody would have guessed that.
Nobody would have guessed that. On top of that, better on third down conversions. They were only 25%, but still 4-16. 3 of 3 on third down conversions. They had more yards leading up to that final drive, more passing yards. They were better in yards per attempt. They were better on the ground by 1 yard. Time of possession, 19-minute differential. The fact that they played keep away from Lane Kiffin is the ultimate chess move that you can come up with, especially when you know it has to go into the
Cole, pause your thought there. I text this to my group of friends. Me and you know, we sent it in there. What was it, like 24 minutes to 7 in the first half. What was it? I'm looking up what we were texting in our group. To your time of possession point is what I'm talking about. It was something unbelievable, the time of possession in that game. I think Ole Miss had the ball for 7 minutes.
Yeah. Ole Miss had the ball in the first half. I think it was for 8 minutes and 1 second. I think
when it was all said and done. Yeah.
It was abysmal. And by the way, here's the problem that I have, which again, we got to give a lot of credit to Kentucky. Death taxes, Kentucky front 7, always being physical. And how about the fact that the secondary stepped up the way that they did? No Maxwell Harrison today. Their star outside cornerback. And you had a true freshman. You had a true freshman going pound for pound with both Trey Harris and Juice Wells, 2 guys that eventually are going to end up being second, third round picks in the NFL draft. The fact that he was able to hold his up, the physical brand of Kentucky football, tip of the cap to Brad White, tip of the cap to Mark Stoops, both defensive gurus who understand their brand of football, but also, I'm just gonna be real. Do you know that scene in Major League 2 where they get the guy from, I think it's Seattle, and it's the Japanese player, and he tells and he tells Dennis Hayward's character Serrano, hey, you don't have any marbles. I guarantee you that there were so many Kentucky fans probably waiting to send out that tweet when it was 4th and 6 to say, oh, Mark Stoops, here we go again. Find a way to just be content with losing close. Kentucky fans can sleep well at night, regardless win or lose, that he went for it. And guess what? Brock Vandagriff found his number 1 target, the guy who has been Mr. Consistency for the last 2 years, to go ahead and make the play. When you have that type of connection, it revitalizes your entire program. It revitalizes the rest of the program's identity moving into October. And the big thing is, Kentucky still has a deep outside shot of making it to the playoff. They have to run the table. They have to get a few more luck to go their way. But still, the biggest problem is that now you're pissed off and you are a Kentucky fan a little bit, because why did we look like that against South Carolina? And the only question I think at this point is, well, Mark Stoops is allergic to Beamer ball, and that would make a little bit of sense, because at least then you get to have that type of conversation. Well, you just can't beat like there's always been that one coach that is somebody's kryptonite. For Mark Stoops, it's Shane Beamer. That might be it. And then also, you're sitting here and you're talking to yourself as a Kentucky fan this morning. Why did he just not go for it on 4th and 8 against Georgia? Because the entire season is still ahead of you, with not only potentially a win against the number 1 team in the country, and then another win against a top 10 team in the country, and one that many people had as a top 5 roster. So, I mean, credit where credit's due. You get a win. You get arguably one of the biggest wins of Mark Stoops' career, who is the king of the SEC in terms of ageism. The guy has been there longer than basically multiple president administrations. He's been doing it for over 14 years. But you're also frustrated because of you're a bad performance and a punt away from maybe, just maybe, still being in this thing as a college football playoff contender.
Yeah, I mean, to Kentucky's next schedule, they have a bye week next week. Then their next 3 are all very winnable.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt at home, at Florida, and Auburn at home. Now, Kentucky's usually, traditionally, like we were texting in our group, the guys like Deion Walker and them, when they know it's a money game against the Georgias, Ole Miss, they're going to play with that motor 100% of the time. It's when Mark Stoops can get these guys rolling against like Vanderbilt at home. It may be, we'll find out this week, in an 11 a.m. sleepy game where it's like, hey, it's just the Vanderbilt brand, but you got to play 100 miles per hour. But to my point, 3 very winnable games. Let's just say hypothetically, even if they go 2-1, you still feel decent, but they get three very winnable games, 2 of the 3 at home. But yeah, for Kentucky, you just continue to build off this. You really probably have 2 games down the stretch that you're totally like, hey, we probably don't win at Tennessee and at Texas. But every other game is definitely winnable, and you got to like where you're at after the way you started back when we're talking about the game on September 7th, that 31-6 beatdown from South Carolina. So give Kentucky them credit.
Dave, I'm going to kind of pump the brakes real fast. If Texas looks slow at any point and Kentucky is able to once again have that money game on the road, this could be a very similar result. I don't think it will happen, but what I will say is that I could see this be a very similar result where Texas somehow comes out on top. But still, very close call because of, again, it's one of these games where Mark Stoops is able to rally the troops, make sure that everyone is awake for these type of moments, make sure that everyone is on their P's and Q's, the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed. You feel good. Like, I'm not ready to go ahead and just wave it as, oh, Texas victory. Tennessee Tennessee would have to fumble the bag extremely hard if they were to lose this game.
And they always beat Kentucky. Again, I hate that stat because it's year to year. It doesn't matter. But to our point, we talked about Shane Beamer beating them all the time. Tennessee's
it's like the same thing. Tennessee is just able to whoop up on Kentucky, which again, as of right now, Tennessee feels like a complete roster top to bottom. They don't even have to have their A-plus punch to be able to walk away with a double-digit victory on the road in an atmosphere like Norman, Oklahoma. But for Mark Stoops, and we got to talk about Ole Miss naturally before we get to the comments, but for Mark Stoops, this is the type of win that when Mitch Barnhart says, we have to make some changes, we believe that there needs to be a new life invoked into the program at Kroger Field. You smile back and go, who's doing that? Who the hell is doing that? Who's marching into Oxford? Who's beating Lane Kiffin? Who's finding a way to shut down a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback? Who's finding a way to blanket a top-tier wide receiver outside of a 4th and 7 call where the odds are against us with a freshman cornerback lined up against him? Who's finding a way to get that consistently? Because I've been doing this for years. I've been doing it now for years. I can't get you to probably a 10, 11 college football playoff win roster every single season, but I sure as hell will get you to 8+ wins, and you're going to be content with that. Like, this is a win that Mark Stoops now gets to hold his hat out and say, you know what? If you fire me, congratulations. Watch how bad you're going to go back into oblivion. You see what Florida's dealing with right now? Enjoy being Florida.
Yeah, this one definitely. Yeah, I don't think Stoops is going to get it. This one, again, I think it's a top 5 Kentucky win, at least in my lifetime.
It's up there.
Maybe 98 Tim Couch beats Alabama's up there. But when you factor in the context of when they beat LSU in 07, those are in there. But, I mean, shoot, no. I mean, you're an 18-point underdog. Like, after the way you've been looking the last few weeks.
I don't even think Kentucky fans would be pissed off if they lost the game because of it ended up being a game on a last-second Hail Mary interception. They were an 18-point underdog, and they found a way to make this thing interesting. And by the way, their coach dropped their nuts and said, screw it, let's go for the big shot. We trust you, Brock Vandagriff. I said in the questions video, can you capitalize when Brock Vandagriff makes the right read? You capitalize. You set yourself up. The ball bounced in favor of you. Gavin Wimsatt tries to run it on in, lands in the end zone. Your tight end lands on it. You're up by 4. Up by 3. And now we get to talk about Ole Miss. Because for Ole Miss, this is more than just potentially now wondering what do we have to do to make the college football playoff. Case in point, you have to beat LSU and or you have to beat Georgia. You have to.
Even South Carolina looks like a lot tougher game.
We're going to get to that in a moment, but you have to win one of those games, if not both of those games, to guarantee your spot. Because this is a loss where today it feels like Kentucky is on top of cloud 9. What if Vanderbilt finds a way just to corral Kentucky into making mistakes, and now they get a win? Well, now it looks worse for you. The offense after the opening drive struggled. The play calling was absolutely abysmal. The fact that you went out and spent money and NIL and highly touted yourself as the king of the transfer portal, especially at fixing the offensive and defensive lines, it was absolutely a joke. And I'm going to be completely honest for a second. The version that we saw, and I brought this up 2 weeks ago when we were doing the post-game show on Kentucky versus Georgia. The team that we saw today for Ole Miss is not the Ole Miss that will withstand in the SEC. You will see a bounce-back performance. But the fact that you started off with 4 cupcake, lackluster, underwhelming games where all you were able to do is kind of put your foot on the gas and act like you were the big shots of college football, it came back to bite you in the ass because you never were tested. You never had to feel that pressure. You never had to feel what's it like to play from behind. How do we run a 2-minute offense where we're able to capitalize and keep moving the sticks? How are we able to make plays to where we're outworking players in this conference that we know if you do not bring your A game, you will be snake bitten? And so the schedule definitely didn't bode well in their favor, but I'm not going to let Lane Kiffin off the hook like this. I'm not, because you want to know why? You're a better team. Top to bottom, Kentucky got the win. Let's call a spade a spade. Kentucky got the win. Kentucky looked promising. Kentucky looked phenomenal on every single drive they had to capitalize. They had a few moments where it did feel like that they were regressing, kind of the lackluster kick back in, the lethargic kind of kick back in. That's fair. Totally fair. But still, they found a way to capitalize. Ole Miss went out and they worked the transfer portal. Ole Miss brought back all of their star players. Ole Miss said that we were going to be a team that was following this last dance mantra to go to the college football playoff because we're not satisfied. You want to know when you're satisfied? When you look in the freaking mirror and realize that version of us can be the worst we play. Oh, by the way, still got to go to Death Valley, still got to go play in Cola, still got to go play against a Georgia team that ranks number 1 and may end up having a phenomenal performance against Alabama tonight. Good luck. Good luck.
Yeah, specifically this game. Yeah, that was one of Kiffin's worst play call. Him and Charlie White.
No, that was the worst play calling performance I've ever seen from Lane Kiffin.
For sure, and third down was rough. But to be fair, go look at Ole Miss statistically. They're not in a lot of third. Traditionally, Lane Kiffin's not a great third down play caller. Even going back to Alabama, he's not a great, but he's not in them a lot. He don't like to be in third down. He likes to get his yards on explosives first and second down. They couldn't do that. You could tell Kentucky had stayed home, did their homework. When you had the sniffer, when they tried to get Caden Priest going, someone either J.J. Weaver was always staying home. Kentucky did their homework all week. I mean, they did 2 years ago, too. They played well defensively. But for Ole Miss specifically, I'm not as down on – I see people tweeting about it as the secondary as some people are. I think it's an improved secondary. They're just very aggressive. They come downhill. They're going to get some penalties. I would rather play aggressive like that than how Ole Miss secondaries have played in the past where they're just giving chunk yards and they're not very competitive. So I'm okay with that. And that's fixable. And you know you're going to have a couple of those each game. But Ole Miss is a very penalized team, too.
How many penalties in the first half would you want to give?
Against Georgia Southern, they had 11 or 12. So they're just a naturally just penalized team. Defense, I was texting some of my Ole Miss buddies, and they didn't agree with me about it. I thought the defense, well, I shouldn't say underwhelming, but wasn't great. It's like, don't just look at the points. Kentucky ain't ever going to go put up a bunch of points on people. But it was just when Kentucky needed a big third down conversion, they got it. When they needed a big second down to keep it to get to manageable in third down, they got it. When they needed big plays, they got it across the board. I'm with you. I think the big story for Ole Miss is, what the hell was Lane Kiffin doing? Just very conservative. It felt like even when they got up like 3 or 4, it's like, dude, if you score to go up 11, like they're not going to come back. Like it's like sometimes like, dude, you got to go for the throat. That's normally him, which is very surprising.
Do you remember a few years ago when Ole Miss was undefeated and they traveled down to Alabama and you heard the get your popcorn ready and it was the opening drive and he said, no, screw it, we're going for it. We're going to go for it on 4th down. Don't worry about 3 points. We want to set a tone. They didn't get it, and at that point, Alabama capitalized.
Yeah.
But at least you showed the gall of, this is who I am as a play caller. This is who I am as a person. I enjoy showing you that you're going to have to beat me with consistency, continuity, and better discipline. But I'm going to force you to make mistakes. And it just felt so conservative.
And we were talking, to go back to the defense, we were talking about time of possession. That's where I look a little bit, just pulling back the layers a little bit more than only giving up 20 points. It's like, I get it, but the time of possession kept them on the field. Again, we talk about it. Your offense only had 8 minutes of total offense in the first half, and they were struggling. And again, somebody's got to step up for Ole Miss on the outside of Trey Harris. It's like, we don't have another receiver. If you're an Ole Miss fan sitting there, no one's really stepped up. You saw Caden Priest scoring on the big heave Hail Mary making a play that the DB couldn't find the ball. But other than that, there really wasn't anybody today outside of Trey Harris that they really threw to or had any kind of – Jackson Dart kind of had any kind of relationship, connection with today. Again, Ole Miss, you still feel – it's like, again, they're lucky we're in a 14 or 12-team college football playoff format now, so it's not the end of the world. But you're right. Now games are like – no one had Kentucky beating Ole Miss going into the year. So
nobody had Kentucky beating Ole Miss.
So it's like, all right – I see some people tweeting the only game they feel good about, these Ole Miss fans, is Mississippi State, which I think is a little bit of an exaggeration.
Okay, yes, but still at the same time, if you look like that, the offensive line was a lot, and don't get me wrong.
That's the problem, too. We thought this was the best depth on paper they've had, and they did not play well today at all.
Okay, 2 things can be true. Kentucky's defensive line is a staple for everyone that knows the Bluegrass State. And Kentucky's defensive line has always – Kentucky finds a way to punch out first-round talent. Josh Hines, Jamon Walker, Bud Dupree.
Josh Allen.
Yeah, Josh Hines Allen. You know that we're going to see Deion Walker in that list eventually. He's going to be a day one talent. Their front 7 has always just been really, really good. But the other thing is that Ole Miss went out and spent a lot of money to fix their offensive line to play up to the competition against a team like Alabama, against a team like Texas, against a team like Georgia. If that's the performance that we're going to see moving forward, you're losing by double digits to those programs. And it's not even going to be close. But you know what really pissed me off? The careless penalties that didn't need to happen. I understand the aggressiveness, David. And from a football standpoint, I appreciate the aggressiveness when playing in coverage. I do. And I was a defensive back, so I know that there are times where plays can sometimes be wishy-washy. It could be a spur of the moment, last second, you just try to make a move, but then the ref catches you, so you get the yellow. But that last drive, right before halftime, Trey Amos, 3rd and 10, easy play. Don't turn your back to him. Don't turn your back to him. All right, pass interference, 15-yard penalty. 3rd and 10 again. Pass interference in the back of the end zone. All right, now you get a fresh set of downs, touchdown.
That drive kind of, I know it was early, Cole, but tell me if you agree with me. That game kind of set, or that drive at the end of the half, that set the tone for the rest of the game. It kind of just felt like, all right, you let Kentucky go into the half, obviously with the lead, but in real belief that we can go play and have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter. And again, like we talked about, if you get into the fourth quarter, one play, it don't matter at that point.
But at that point, also, you realize that the yards that were given up were not just because of explosive plays by Kentucky. Ole Miss was handing them a fresh set of first downs. And when you do that to a team that right now has nothing to lose and maybe kind of feels like they gained a little bit of momentum, especially after finding their niche last week against Ohio, they're going to give you a performance to remember, and they're going to take advantage of that. And they did. That drive, to me, was the most critical drive because if you force a punt or at least a field goal, you're up by 3 or the game is tied, and maybe we're talking about this in overtime and how that looks. The Lane Kiffin rumors to Florida are going to rise. They're going to skyrocket, and they're going to skyrocket in 2 different vicinities. The first one is Lane has already started looking at real estate out in Gainesville. And another one is we don't want Lane Kiffin to keep him as far away from us as humanly possible. But to be fair, this is a game where now the rumors have to start. Because of if you don't make the college football playoff with this roster, with this personnel, with what you added in via the portal, with what you brought in terms of returning production, with what you're doing currently with your contract, with what you know, the resources, the facilities, and what you could have at your disposal down in Gainesville, it becomes a little more challenging. Making the college football playoff was the ultimate trump card for Lane not to have to make this decision. Hey, I'm in the playoff. You guys are going to want instantaneous results. I'm not going to get there until earliest, probably January 31st. Best of luck to you. It didn't work out this time. Call me the next time around. I'm going to get a pay raise regardless. But if they lose one more game, they are not guaranteed a playoff spot at 10-2. People want
the schedule, yeah.
People want to believe that a 10-2 team from the SEC is going to get in. It's not guaranteed.
Not if it's Missouri or Ole Miss.
Mizzou is not guaranteed. Mizzou is 100% not guaranteed. Even though the thumbs up says I'm wrong, no, Mizzou is not guaranteed. Ole Miss is not guaranteed. Their schedules are so meticulously planned that you have to win a marquee game to allow yourself to lose in this type of competition. So the pressure is now on for both of these squads, especially for Ole Miss, because you travel next week to the most underrated atmosphere in college football in Williams-Brice Stadium to face a South Carolina team that will be well-rested, coming off of a bye. Guess what happens the week after that? You play another team coming off of a bye in what is known as the most hostile environment in college football, Death Valley. And it's probably going to be a night game. In fact, I think it is a night game. I think it's guaranteed to be a night game.
I think there's some stat, too, out there, Cole. Since 2020, teams that have played true back-to-back road games, not a road game by road game, like true back-to-back week road games, I think the only 2 teams that have actually won their back-to-back road games was 2019 LSU, and I think 2021 Georgia. I think not counting the COVID year, Alabama did too. But if you take that out, there was some random stat I saw where it's like, yeah, it goes to show you how hard it is to win back-to-back weeks in a true road game where you're getting back late and having to go back on the road next week. And it's already going to be tough enough, and you're playing a really good South Carolina defensive front. I mean, I think you can make an argument the South Carolina game may be a little tougher right now from a matchup standpoint.
South Carolina game is going to be much tougher. I'm sorry. Like I'm going to be completely honest here. I think Ole Miss is still going to find a way to get to 10-2, but they may beat Georgia and they may beat LSU because I'm not sure what I'm going to see from South Carolina. South Carolina is going to be rested. We may be able to see a healthy Rocket Sanders, a healthy Lenora Sellers. And if they have those explosive plays, like the one that we saw to Dane Key on a 4th and 6, that should have been an easy coverage, then you're losing that game. You 100% are losing that game. That's not even going to be close. That's going to be in so much favor of the Gamecocks, especially in that atmosphere. And they're well rested. And they may have to go ahead and wake up. This may be the wake-up call that they needed. This true.
Yeah, I don't think Ole Miss play. I'm not ready to give a prediction. I think Ole Miss is going to play better next week.
They have
usually
to.
what it is from these college teams
have
are
to.
very resilient.
They have to, because Kentucky's offense going into this game ranked as high as 8. I mean, my bad. Their lowest ranking was 83rd in rushing. Everything else was in the 90s or below. You were the number 1 defense in college football. You were the number 1 defense on third down. You were number 1 against the run. You sure as hell didn't look like it today. That's comical. That is hysterically bad. How awful you looked in those vicinities. And yes, did you make some plays? Did Prince and Manley Ellen show up? Yes, he did. Did you watch as Jared Ivey and JJ Pegues also made some plays? Absolutely. Did you see Chris Paul really show why he was a valuable asset? Sertain Perkins, that is not getting enough respect at the national level, had 2 big-time sacks against Brock Vandegrift. Like, the defense did show up. The offense didn't, and the play calling didn't, and they capitalized and attacked the one weakness of Ole Miss. Ole Miss ranked 66th in pass coverage going into this game against Wake Forest, Middle Tennessee State, FCS Furman, and Georgia Southern. And Kentucky said, all right, bet, let's do it. And Ole Miss is going to watch as next week, where they won't go up against the same type of receivers, but they will go up against explosive playmakers. They're going to have to shut it down. And they're going to have to win convincingly on the road in Cola before they have to go travel to Death Valley. And that is more so to set the standard for the rest of the year. You get one. I always say this, Dave. You get one. You get one game where you're allowed to look bad, win or lose, and I'm not going to judge you. This is your one. This is your one. And you blew it before the month of October. You blew it before what is considered the challenging part of your schedule. Congratulations, Ole Miss. That's how you have to look today. And Ole Miss fans are allowed to be pissed off, because you want to know why? For weeks, all we have heard is that this team feels unstoppable. This team feels like that they can hoist it up. This is the year. And it just looked like the way the players took the field, the way that Jackson Dart comes out of the bus, wearing the hoodie, having on the sunglasses, too cool for school. They didn't care. Oh, it's homecoming. We don't care. We're just going to walk all over them. They looked off. We're going to beat Georgia because of how bad Georgia looked. Maybe we just got to say Kentucky looked that good, and Beamer ball is the kryptonite of Lexington. Maybe that's it. It has to be a reality at this point.
Yeah, I think a little bit more. Give Kentucky credit for sure. I think a little bit more just of an Ole Miss problem. Again, that's one of the worst games I've seen them play under Lane outside of probably his first year. I take that back. 22 at Arkansas was pretty bad. They got beat like 44-6.
Still, wait, was that 2022? Was it 2021?
No, 22. They went. It was the week after they played Alabama, lost. That was the game all the fans got pissed about Cole Kublik talking about Lane Kiffin because it's such a blowout going to Auburn and taking plays with him. They got pissed. It's like 44-6 in Fayetteville. It was awful. It was a bad game. But nonetheless, yeah, I mean, Ole Miss got to clean the penalties up, get better on the offensive line. I think they got a decent matchup against South Carolina defensively. I think their front seven matches up well against South Carolina. Overall, though, man, yeah, disappointed. Again, I was texting that group. Well, was this the biggest upset of college football season? You said Notre Dame, NIU.
No, it's Notre Dame, NIU, but still.
Yeah, but I don't know how many people really thought Notre Dame was. I didn't think Notre Dame was a playoff team. Some people did. So that didn't really shock me. I shouldn't say I was not shocked they lost in Northern Illinois. It wasn't like I was calling that. But Ole Miss is better than Notre Dame. So I think that's where it's a little bit of a, dang, dude, nobody. So this was the lone SEC game in its time slot, and they were an 18-point. I think people are just kind of like, let's see how good Ole Miss really is in the first conference game. They'll get challenged by Kentucky's defense. I mean, and they did. I just thought they would get off the field and not let Kentucky just completely control the game at the line of scrimmage. And that's what they did. That's Kentucky football. Ole Miss just got to get better. They got their one free or get out of jail free card. I'm with you.
And you burned it in the month of September.
Depending what else happens, 10-2 is not automatic. You really only feel safe if you run the table the rest of the way. It's going to be tough if you play the way you did today.
It's impossible if you play the way you did today. Real quickly, for those who are calling out Caden Davis for missing that kick, listen, yeah, I get it. You expect a guy that is a senior, been on the roster, you trust him to make that type of kick. You should never have been in that situation to begin with. Plain and simple, the play calling, the lackluster. Also, the fact that Caden Prieskorn, who has been a security blanket at times, targeted one time on the biggest play of the day of the season for Ole Miss.
They haven't gone to him much this year.
Don't you think that with an all SEC tight end, maybe you want to get him a little bit more
outside
involved?
of Trey Harris, they really don't have I know they have consistent threats.
They have Jordan Watkins. They have Caden Prieskorn. They have Juice Wells. They went to
Aiden Williams, Caden Lee. I like those guys. It's just that they were just totally out of sync to that for whatever
They went to nobody. Also,
if I see another Jackson Dart draw, I may pull my eyes out.
On third down, how many times do you realize that number 2 is not your number 1 answer? It's time to change it up, guys. It's like literally Leanne Tui in The Blind Side. Enough with the trick plays, Bert. Enough with the trick plays, Lane. Pitch the damn ball. Honestly. Real quickly before we get on out of here, and I do want to get to some comments. Dave, I'm going to be completely 100% real with you. I'm kind of pissed at Lane Kiffin for the fake injury. I'm pissed because of, is it not a penalty? Will you not give flag for it? You won't. But still, you're the one that complains about it the most. He has complained about it with Ole Miss. I mean, he's complained about it with.
He called the A&M player a bitch.
Yeah, he called an A&M player a bitch. He's complained about it when he went up against Auburn. He's complained about it against Arkansas, and then you do it with matchup, and it's clear as day. It's really like.
I mean, when the announcers are blatantly just drilling you about.
Oh well, shit. Yeah. Oh no, Craig. I'm sorry, Dave.
You saw Jackson Dart was like they're telling you to go down, and Ulysses Bentley.
It's like everyone sees it. And you're the one coach that has been the most vocal about it.
Yeah.
You're the one dude who's been the most outspoken for wasting time like that. And you do it. And so now, kind of you get to eat your own crow, because if you wanted to slow down the clock and you're sit with an L now entering the month of October, where it has to be a win-out scenario. And if it's not, the only person to blame is you. The only person to blame is you at this point. And I want to believe that Lane Kiffin can turn the corner. I want to believe that Lane Kiffin is one of the best coaches in college football. But there's so many times that you just look at it. And also, Jackson Dart. Dartnado. I have been one of the biggest believers in him. Everyone knows this. I am the president of the Dartnado for Heisman fan club. You have a free play. You have a free play because you know he jumped off sides, and that's what you decide to do with it.
Shot and fumble.
You go try to run and fumble the ball, and thank God he jumped off sides, because if you would have lost, that would have been the game right there. How many times as a veteran quarterback should you be making those type of plays? I can't blame it all on him, but there are so many things that just piss me off when it comes to this performance today. Because if it's not that Kentucky didn't play. Kentucky played it, for my money, an A game. They didn't play an A+ game, but they played an A game. And Ole Miss allowed them to also play an A game because they never want to make the adjustments. And I think that that's what you're pissed off for. And Kentucky right now, you may be a little pissed off that you now have to literally run the table to make it to the college football playoff. But this is a win that can raise morale. A lot of people were probably saying that this is now an 8-4 win team at best. Maybe now you're 9-3, or maybe you're 10-2. A win like this can do wonders for a program's aura.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Kentucky, at this point, let's just still hope to get to a bowl game at this point. Just 1 week. You hadn't looked great the weeks before. You'll take it. But I'm not talking college football playoffs for the old Cats yet. Let's see it week to week. But again, schedule's manageable outside of Tennessee, Texas. But again, this league, as we found out, I was talking about, it was just a 5-team league, I think, right now. And Ole Miss was in that 5.
It's a 4-team league right now.
Yeah. I mean, and again, we could see that slowly dwindle. So it is what it is. We learn something new every week. These programs learn something new about their teams, their opponents every year. So much lack of continuity, new players. You got to keep focused, especially when you're bringing that many people in from a transfer portal standpoint, from a continuity standpoint. From Ole Miss, the overall point, I think the defense played well enough, not great, to win the football game. Offense, play calling, Jackson Dart was not his best, and that was the difference. And Kentucky had to get shot in the fourth quarter, came down to 4th and 7. Their guy won their battle. In those close games late in the fourth quarter in this league, you let somebody have a chance that late, all it comes down to is a play or two. And at that point, who cares who has the better roster on paper at that point?
I'll tell you what you were just saying, I 100%, sorry, I'm trying to get to the next point here, but I agree with you. When you're not ready to go ahead and give them that A+, that college football playoff performance, but It feels like there's 4 teams right now, and maybe it'll be even less that are guaranteed to make the playoff. But as of this moment, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, they're your front runners in the SEC. Quick chats real fast. If you send us a super chat, you get to cut the line. You get to jump up top. Dylan with the $4.99 payment. Thank you, Dylan. South Carolina's game was an outlier. True UK fans knew how good their defense was. We've watched them for 5 years. Yeah, death, taxes, defense in Lexington. Like, you could always expect that whenever Mark Stoops is leading the charge. He always seems to have his team prepared for that. I'll give you that. Florida may not want to call him. Poor Kiffin. Yeah, I won't be shocked. I mean, there's a guy right by the name of Kirk Cignetti in Bloomington, Indiana. I think you're muted, Dave.
Cole, you made a good point. I was saying earlier, the worst thing that could happen for Ole Miss is them go like 9-3, miss the playoffs. That would be easy for him to leave, because at the same point, there's going to be some pissed off big money people at Grove Collective that are like, dude, we spent that much. It's probably the best roster on paper.
That's the best roster we've ever had.
Like, don't come to me about more money. Like, there's going to be a little disgruntlement. There was an easy way for him to have an old Irish exit. That would be it. Again,
that's 100% the way.
I know you don't want to talk about that either, but to your point, I agree.
South Carolina will move up in the standings after we beat Ole Miss next week. They may move up this week. Honestly, they may get into the top 25. They were close last week. I could see this being a top 25 matchup to boost up both of their ratings. Ole Miss went into this game arrogant, and it showed poor coaching, sloppy execution, Dart making mistakes, not a top 10 team. I don't know who is in the top 10, but this performance today, not a top 10 one. That's for damn sure. Ole Miss is soft. Can't wait till next weekend in Columbia. Yeah, you should. You should be looking forward to it, because they showed you their weakness, and they cannot afford to drop another game. How many injuries do they have to fake to stop the clock? Yep, we already talked about that. This is the best I've ever seen Vandergriff. Vandergriff looked awesome today. Like, Vandergriff didn't look elite, but he looked awesome. Like, the way that you can imagine this offense working with the dual threat mobility and the deep shot accuracy, it was there, Dave. I will agree. It was 100% there.
Yeah, he played well enough for sure to win. Made some simple plays that won't show up in a stat box.
This was so satisfying to watch. Yeah, it probably was for a lot of people, seeing Ole Miss have to eat a little bit of crow. Ole Miss scripts their first drive. After that, they get lost. They did. They got 100% lost. It was pathetic. 1 completion for 8 yards going into the third quarter after that opening drive. It was bad. It was bad. Jackson Dart, Matt Corral 2.0. He's better, but still, I get the point. I get the messaging. UK played chess today. They did. They played 4D chess, and they were running circles all around Lane Kiffin until he said checkmate. That 100% happened.
No, 100%. We talked about that.
I'm telling you, we got caught sleeping. You might have. Honestly, that might be the case for Kentucky. They may have been caught sleeping. This may be the most talented Kentucky team, well, maybe ever. Schedule is brutal, but SC should have never happened. SC is not any good. What happens the rest of the way, the results will haunt them. I'm telling you, as a Kentucky fan, take this win with so much pride, but also realize that you have to run the table to get into the playoff. And that probably pisses you off, knowing that you were a punt away and a bad performance against South Carolina from sitting at 5-0 and feeling confident going into your next few games against a Vanderbilt squad, against an Auburn squad, against a Florida team. That's where I think that you're frustrated if you're a Kentucky fan, because Mark Stoops finally just said, you know what? I'm going to go swing. And 2 weeks ago, he should have done the same thing. And now they're out of the playoff conversation unless they win the SEC title.
Yeah. Again, we'll come back to Kentucky in the playoffs in a couple of weeks.
Now we know Mizzou is better than Ole Miss and Miami. Nah, I don't think so. I probably don't think so. Tell Pat McAfee and Nick Saban your guesses suck. Okay, fair. I mean, we all picked Ole Miss to win. We did. They all picked Ole Miss.
I didn't see anybody pick Kentucky to win.
No, I don't think anybody picked Kentucky to win. Nobody picked
Maybe to cover, but I didn't think I saw that. But to straight up win, I've been shocked.
Nobody picked Kentucky to win. No, KSR. There were 2 guys at KSR that picked Kentucky to win.
Shocker, the Kentucky website.
UK beating Ole Miss at home makes Georgia's win seem a little bit better. It does. No, it strengthens Georgia's record. By the way, Georgia and Alabama are 2 teams, along with Texas, that probably don't need to worry about 10-2 to miss the college football playoff because of where their logos, their branding, all of that resides.
Georgia's schedule's tough. I mean, 10-2 in that schedule is really
That's
good.
what I'm saying. They would earn their way into the CFP even if they didn't go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Adam Tomlinson. By the way, Adam, thank you very much for following us. I appreciate you. Definitely, we still need to get more out of this offense. We relied too much on defense. You did. But the thing is that when the defense did deliver, and the offense was starting to hum just enough, you see that life. You see that identity. You see that consistency. That's where I feel like that you can be confident if you are a Kentucky fan. You can't feel confident of going 10-2 because your schedule still has a ton of craps. But I think that you can feel comfortable 8-4, 9-3. It's not a dead beaten horse just yet. That's for damn sure. Makes Kentucky Vanderbilt an interesting game. It does. You know, what version of Vanderbilt did we actually see? One that has truly turned the corner underneath Clark Lee with Diego Pavia, or one that still has a ton of question marks that maybe beat up on a lackluster Missouri team? And also, what version of Kentucky do we see moving forward?
Those are the games Kentucky loses.
That's what I'm saying. Like, what version are we seeing of those two moving forward? Last two of you guys, KS, are they them boys? Sure they are. Congratulations, I guess. Tyler Green, South Carolina looking more favorable against Ole Miss next week now. Yeah, they are. 100%. 100%. They are looking like that team that can hold their own, and they're going to get a potential top 15 victory with Shane Beamer at the helm. Everyone's heard me say this multiple times throughout the offseason. I have truly believed that South Carolina is the ultimate wild card of 2024. You tell me that they lose by double digits to Alabama, yet win a game-winning field goal against Missouri and Ole Miss. I can believe that happening. I can. You tell me that they lose by triple. You tell me they lose on a last-second Hail Mary to Vanderbilt, but yet somehow they finish 9-3 with a double-digit victory over Clemson. I believe it. They 100%, I think, have a better shot. You can count Tennessee out. Yes, you can. All right, last two, because Dave and I got to get on out of here. Brodo Baggins, by the way, awesome freaking name, dude. I'm not even going to lie. UK may be the new Auburn, not knowing when they're going to win or lose the big games. Yeah, you want to know what? They kind of are. They kind of feel that way, don't they? They truly
better than all. Let's be honest. Auburn's staring at 4 straight losing seasons. I don't think Kentucky's to that point.
But that's not what I'm saying. Do you remember when Gus Malzahn was there and he would have like that 10-2 season?
Oh, Gus would always have a big win, then he'd have a big.
He would always have like the 10-2.
No, he still does it at UCF. He beat Oklahoma State 55-7 last year and lost to Navy.
Exactly. Like, that's Gus Malzahn, and that I feel like right now is kind of Mark Stoops. He's falling into that trap of, we're going to win a top 15 matchup, and then we're going to play Vanderbilt, and we're going to lose by double digits the exact same way that we lost to South Carolina. You're welcome for the sub. Pay attention. Appreciate you guys. No joke. Oh, here we go. Now I understand what Scott said. Auburn has finally put together a good drive and scored a touchdown. Congratulations. We are excited, and the good news is Dave and I will be back here in probably like 2.5 hours to break down that game, and we're also going to be breaking down the Southwest Classic. So for Dave Shumate, I am Cole Thompson. Do me a favor. Make sure that you like this video, hit the ring notification down below, and it takes 2 seconds, and it's not going to be that long. We just did 45 minutes for you guys. Make sure that you hit subscribe. That way you're keeping up to date with all post-game shows, live reactions, Sunday Fun Day, Dave's Talk Ball. It's a great show every single Monday and Wednesday night. Make sure that you also download the podcast version of the show. Follow us on the social channels at TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Scream at Dave at Mach 10 Sports. Go ahead and truly yell at me at Mr. Cole Thompson. I'll be combative and fight right back. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Kentucky heads back to the Bluegrass State with another marquee win, 20-17. And Lane Kiffin, you might want to start packing your bags for baseball, for Gainesville. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Peace.